With Glover Teixeira versus Jiri Prochazka, it's another opportunity for this weight class to transcend to the next generation. Because ever since Jon Jones became the champion in 2011, the division was never able to get conquered by the next generation, like you see with all other weight classes. Only light heavyweight did not have that young successor. Jon Jones was champ, then Daniel Cormier became champ, Jon Jones became champ again, then Jan Blachowicz became the champ, and now Glover Teixeira is the champion, looking to defend his title against a young, savage, 29-year-old Viking samurai at the same time somehow, the Shadow Realm sender himself, Jiri Prochazka, who has been knocking people out for 5 years straight, hasn't lost since 2015, and only has one decision win in his entire career. 27 finishes, one decision win, and that decision was back in 2016 when he fought Mark Tanyos. And you probably guessed it, the guy wasn't even a light heavyweight, it was an open weight fight. Mark Tanyos was a heavyweight. Jiri Prochazka is that young fighter, that 29-year-old, that is the successor to the weight class that the division needs right now. The older guys have been dominating this weight class for such a long time, and if Jiri can break that spell, if he can break that trend, the division can finally evolve and go forward. But looking at Jiri Prochazka's previous fights against grapplers, you do see him sometimes getting taken down pretty easily, giving up his back all over the place, getting ground and pounded, almost choked out many times. It's a scary fight for Jiri Prochazka against someone like Glover Teixeira. Glover is one of the best grapplers in the entire division and has been winning his fights through his grappling more so than his boxing, which he did when he came into the UFC. In the beginning, Glover was trying to knock everybody out. He had a lot of confidence in his own boxing skill, and this came crashing down when he ate that rumbling uppercut from Anthony Johnson, and then got absolutely destroyed by Alexander Gustafsson. Glover knew from there he needed to make some changes, and he couldn't just box with these guys anymore. He's always been a legit elite grappler in MMA, but shied away from that as most grapplers and wrestlers do once they start training boxing. Glover fell into that same trap, and now when he went back to his roots, when he's starting to grapple more against these guys, even against younger fighters, I mean, the guy's 43 years old, so everybody's younger than him these days. That's how he's pulling through these fights. Jiri Prochazka is definitely going to be in a level of danger against Glover's grappling, because if it hits the ground, if Yuri's back touches the mat, this fight's pretty much over. All the analysis on Jiri Prochazka's previous fights show that he always gives up his back. When he gets taken down, he likes to just give up his back. He likes to turn over and try to stand up, and against Glover, that's not going to work. Glover keeps a tremendous amount of pressure, and even through pressure, opponents are able to force Jiri to roll over. And even other times, he almost got choked out by guillotines and stuff. And everything Jiri has tried off of his back is something that Glover has seen a million times already. There is a huge gap between the grappling skill of Jiri and Glover, and there's barely anything Jiri is going to be able to do on the bottom. That's just what it is. And if he does show something, it just shows the dramatic improvements he's made in his career as a young fighter, because young fighters are going to be able to evolve at a faster rate than older fighters. But there is another gap here as well: the striking. Jiri Prochazka is a much more effective and more dangerous striker than Glover Teixeira. Not only is he sharper with his placements of his punches, his timing is better than Glover's, his precision is better than Glover's overall, and not only does he throw every strike in the book and fight southpaw or orthodox, he is way ahead of Glover when it comes to being versatile as a striker. But now backing all that with insane attributes, Jiri Prochazka is a giant light heavyweight. He's going to be taller than Glover. They list him as 6'3", 6'4", sometimes. I've even seen 6'5" before. He's a tall guy for the weight class, and he has an 80-inch reach and uses all of it effectively. But the wingspan of the elbows are something that a lot of people aren't talking about. This was pointed out before with Jon Jones, the ability to generate a lot of power in the rotation for his elbows. This is going to be the same thing with Jiri Prochazka as well, especially against someone like Glover. And that is why Jiri was able to knock out Reyes so easily with a spinning back elbow. It's a different kind of rotation that these longer guys are able to throw. And that's going to be the very similar thing against Glover if it does get in close range, but that's an issue, because not only is the reach a major advantage for Jiri, but the speed. Jiri is so much faster, man, in everything he does. The footwork alone, given if Jiri can keep Glover at the end of his punches, which probably won't even be that hard to do, there is a scenario that Glover is never able to get on the inside, and the fight gets wrapped up potentially in a couple minutes, because Glover just does not have the chin to take a full Jiri punch to the face, most likely, or a couple at least. If Jiri cracks him the way he cracked Volkan Oezdemir, this fight can end literally in 10 seconds. That's actually similar to the way Anthony Johnson knocked out Glover Teixeira. It was like 10 or 11 seconds into the fight, caught him with an uppercut, and actually Jiri caught King Mo with a similar kind of uppercut, and King Mo gave the same reaction that Glover gave to Anthony Johnson. So that is a possibility to happen as well, that same uppercut that Glover got hit with before. And it can end, again, in like 10 seconds. But if Glover gets Jiri to the ground, this fight could be over in like 20 to 30 seconds. Depends how long the grappling sequences go on and how fast Glover chases a choke. That's ultimately the story of the fight. This might be one of the fastest championship fights in light heavyweight history. Jiri touches him once, good. This fight's over. Glover gets him on the ground. This fight's potentially over. But there are a couple misconceptions about Jiri Prochazka's takedown defense. It's actually not as bad as it seems to be. And actually, it's a bit more inconsistent. Jiri mostly gets taken down against fighters that either A, have a legit high-level wrestling background, like Brendan Halsey, who was an NCAA Division I All-American. I believe his high school record was something insane, like 150 wins and 16 losses with 80 pins, in a whole unit for the light heavyweight division. I mean, a huge guy. He was like the only one that was able to take Jiri down that had a wrestling background or some kind of grappling background. Then there were old fights like the first King Mo fight and the Vadim Nemkov fight, which happened way back in the day. In the rematch with King Mo, where he fixed his takedown defense issues, where King Mo was barely able to take him to the ground at all, or even some takedowns against Brendan Halsey, he was able to defend him pretty quickly, man. Jiri actually has a very fast and powerful sprawl. And his takedown defense has generally gotten better over time. When he was getting taken down by Vadim Nemkov, that was back in 2015. Look at the progression he made when he fought King Mo the second time, or even when he fought Brendan Halsey in 2018. A drastic improvement, to the point where in the King Mo fight, he barely was even taken down at all, and able to sprawl on most of them, and switching stances away from them. This is actually something that Jiri is probably going to do against Glover. The rematch against King Mo is probably the most important fight to look at for Jiri Prochazka going into the Glover fight. There might be a lot of things he did in that fight he's going to replicate against Glover. There were a couple major things that Jiri was doing against King Mo. Number one, keeping a low and forward stance, always being in a position to defend and sprawl on takedowns. When you're leaning forward, yeah, you could potentially get hit, but he wants the opponent to punch at his head so he can pull back, dip his head to the sides, and counter or something like that, which he was able to do against King Mo as well. His head being so forward is going to create an illusion. Glover's going to think that Jiri's head is closer than it is, but when he goes to throw a punch, Jiri's going to pull back and look to counter or just evade the shots, trying to feel out Glover's speed. And by missing the head, it's going to cause an overextension on Glover, and eventually it's going to make it easy for Jiri to counter him. So the fact that he has such a low stance is going to make it more difficult for Glover to shoot in under him. And his jabs are not going to be similar to the other guys that Glover was able to shoot under. There are a couple takedowns that Glover got shooting under jabs, and that's mainly from fighters that were keeping a high stance, very tall, which made it pretty easy for Glover to get at their legs and at their hips. With Jiri Prochazka's stance, it's a lot more threatening and it's a further distance. The hips are further away. So that's a big one. Going with this stance though, you also saw Jiri constantly switching stances, either moving forward or moving backwards away from King Mo. And the reason why he was doing this was because, number one, it makes it a harder target to hit. When you're switching stances backwards, you're actually covering a lot more ground, lengthening the distance between him and his opponent. And again, as he has a longer reach than most other fighters, this is only going to help him, especially against Glover, who is so much slower. And number two, the more important thing about switching stances like this is, it makes the takedowns a lot harder for his opponent. You even saw sometimes with King Mo, where he was trying to grab both legs or one leg, but because Jiri switched stances in the middle of that, King Mo missed his grip. That split second is everything for a takedown. And if Jiri is able to disrupt it by switching stances like that, if he's able to make the opponent miss the grip for the takedown, it makes it so much easier to defend it. And that could be the same thing against Glover as well. For an example, we could look at this one right here. It's a better example to show because it's the one time that Jiri actually went after King Mo and got inside of takedown range instead of keeping long distance to where King Mo is not able to reach far enough. Even when Jiri is in close range, his quick switching of stances still takes away the takedown. So Jiri's an orthodox and his lead leg is his left. That is what King Mo is going to target for his takedown. And in that orthodox stance, Jiri is throwing a right straight. While moving at King Mo, he's switching stances into southpaw, but King Mo did not notice that. Mo still thought that Jiri was an orthodox. So now Jiri's lead leg is his right. His left gets pulled away by switching, making that leg the furthest from King Mo to reach. But because he did reach for it, he had no grip, and that's precious time wasted on a takedown attempt. Now he has to improvise, switch up the grip, focus now on the right leg, which is the lead, but there's not enough time to create a strong grip. and Yuri is able to easily just pull his leg out of there. Constant switching stances backwards or forward to throw off any potential takedown on him. And Yuri will do this whether the takedown is coming or not. It's a constant thing for him, always going to be switching stances backwards. It's good to defend strikes, it's good to create distance, and it's good against takedowns in the specific matchup. Now, if Glover was more of a kicker, things would be a bit different. He can kick the legs, kick the body, and potentially even try to catch the head with a kick if he's able to read it right. And that's another thing going against Glover as well, because he's not a big kicker. Yuri's low stance is not going to be too threatened. What you saw from King Mo was he was able to land a couple big leg kicks on Yuri because that low stance is very vulnerable to leg kicks. You're putting a lot of weight on your front leg, makes it a lot harder for you to check leg kicks. But again, because Glover is not a big kicker, Yuri's probably not going to have to worry too much about it. Now, a great offensive thing for switching stances like this is that it opens up creative angles for Yuri to punch from. And as we know from Glover's defense, it's not the most sophisticated, it's not the most complex, difficult to get through. He kind of does a similar thing in all of his fights where he covers up or reaches forward. The reach forward is never going to work against Yuri because of how much longer Yuri is. But the angles he's going to be able to take are going to be similar to what happened with Thiago Santos when he fought Glover. Thiago Santos, because of how fast he was able to punch around the guard many times and even hurt Glover. Jiri Prochazka is going to be able to do the same thing, especially when he's switching stances like this. And Glover's chasing him because Glover is a pressuring fighter. He's a guy that likes to go forward. Going forward into a buzzsaw like this, it's only going to last so long. So that's the end of the breakdown, guys. My prediction for the fight is going to come out tomorrow, and I'm going to try to predict who has a better chance of winning here. This fight could literally end very quickly for either side. Glover can absolutely destroy Yuri, and Yuri can just destroy Glover. It's a super exciting fight to look forward to, and I'll see you guys then.